All right, so why do we think we click with some people instantly? I think the compatibility between two people whenever they meet is driven by a compatibility of beliefs about themselves. So, for example, if I think I deserve to be treated kindly, and that others deserve to be treated kindly as well, and there's another person who thinks that who resonates on the same things, that they deserve to be treated kindly and that they ought to treat others kindly as well, then we'll mesh well. On the other hand, if I believe that I deserve to be treated poorly, and someone else thinks that others deserve to be treated poorly, so that forms a stable toxic relationship as well, right? Is chemistry something magical or something mechanical? I think it's something very mechanical with respect to your nervous system, your neurochemistry, in terms of the simplest way to explain this would be seen in the cases of attachment wounding. Like if someone has abandonment anxiety, they're more likely to find people who are avoidant emotionally, and then they'll cling on to them because it confirms the deeply held belief that they think that they deserve to be abandoned, and then them trying to sort of disprove that belief with the same kinds of people that would abandon them. Do we believe relationships form because of compatibility or coincidence? It is definitely not coincidence. It has to be compatibility of the belief systems. Are we choosing people consciously or just recognizing what feels familiar? I think we recognize what feels familiar in cases like these. What happens when we trust vibes blindly? See, the problem is that you'll fall into a pattern, or the beliefs that you have about yourself might not be true, might not match up with reality. So, for example, if you think of dignity, like if you think of every human being deserves to be treated in a kind and humane manner, but you do not hold those beliefs about yourself, and you think that, I don't deserve to be treated kindly and with basic dignity that I deserve as a human being, then you're more likely to accept partners in business or at work, in your relationships, that are likely to treat you with some kind of malice because they're not treating you humanely. And so if you trust vibes blindly, you sort of play into these negative self-beliefs of yours that do not match up with the reality of you being a human being. Like if you feed into these negative self-beliefs that I do not deserve to be treated kindly, then you will find people and accept people who treat you poorly. Why do people end up in the same kind of relationships over and over again? Because they treat vibes blindly, because they accept those vibes blindly. Can two people be perfectly in sync and still be toxic? Absolutely. The stable toxic relationship that I talked about that forms if someone thinks that they deserve to be treated poorly, and there's someone else who thinks that others deserve to be treated poorly, and that forms a very stable and extremely toxic relationship loop. Are we confusing familiarity with health? Definitely, because familiarity in the past kept you safe. Familiarity in the past, when you were a child, you were a toddler, you were a baby, those patterns kept you safe, like attuning to your caregiver's sort of attachment style in some senses, or like the attachment style you derived whilst growing up in your caregiver's arms, right? In your caregiver's care, under your caregiver's care, and that kept you safe because that made you feel like it was home. So over time, the definition of what feels safe needs to be updated, but it doesn't get updated because we're not entirely a self-aware species as of now. What if your relationships are reinforcing the worst things you believe about yourself? This is exactly the thing that I was talking about with respect to negative self-beliefs being reinforced by the person that you feel attracted to. And they do get reinforced because let's say you had like an anxious attachment style growing up, and then you attract partners who think that you deserve to be abandoned. Uh, maybe it might not be in that malicious a tone, but you get the gist, right? Why is it so hard to break out of certain relationship patterns? Because because changing neurochemistry takes a lot of effort, and that effort only comes through repetitions, right? And unfortunately, people usually fall into these patterns very young, and unless and until they reach some kind of a nirvana, enlightenment type of thing, they'll keep playing those things over and over again, and then these neurochemical pathways get shaped, get reinforced with the same thing over time. So unless and until you find and stick and hold on to something that sort of gives you an actual safe sense, like a safe space where you can sort of process your attachment wounds or something, right? Your beliefs about yourself and your beliefs about the world, unless and until that happens, it's really difficult to fall out of these loops. What if relationships are actually feedback loops? They absolutely are. And yeah, like I said, you need a safe space to be able to process those things. How do repeated interactions look in a dynamic between two people? Like I said, I think I've just answered this with the repetitions, right? Your neurochemical pathways get strengthened with what you consciously repeat, subconsciously repeat as well. That's it. What beliefs make a relationship stabilize into something healthy versus toxic? I think I've already answered that in the beginning. If sync is built, not found, what can you change? Then you can change your entire architecture of how you form relationships with other people. You can basically build them consciously, and sort of give them the due diligence that they need. Unfortunately, not everyone, actually most people on planet Earth are not operating from a place of self-awareness. So, a lot of them rely on vibes rather than on like a psychologically healthy architecture to psychologically healthy blueprint of an architecture to actually build healthy relationships upon. How do you break a negative loop once it's formed? I think that's, the answer is pretty simple. It's self-awareness. Once you're self-aware, once you can metacognitively be aware of the loops that are running, that your neural pathways are running, I think then it sort of becomes easier to detach because you're now able to see what is happening clearly. Can you consciously create better sync with people? Yes, you have to do a lot of work on yourself. You have to you have to basically do a lot of deep inner work, and that's the answer I have for now.